All right, hey, I'm Dr. Dave Schwartz with Team Chiropractic. Welcome to Next Generation, Raising Healthy Kids. This is a big topic near and dear to my heart as a father of two. The first thing we need to do when we kind of try to motivate you to make changes in how we're kind of raising our kids to be healthy is we need to establish that there is indeed a problem with what's going on right now in our country. If we look at the stats about kids and their health, it's really pretty alarming. 1 in 3 is overweight, 1 in 6 has a learning disability, asthma, ADHD, food allergies, seizures, autism. All these things are rampant, they're skyrocketing, and they're rising, really over just the last 20 years at an alarming rate. 50% of all children out there are either overweight or have a chronic illness. So that's unfortunately kind of the new normal in our country, where it wasn't, when I was growing up in the 70s, and hopefully, when most of you were growing up. So we need to make some changes. One of the big things that we always have to think about, going forward is healthy kids become healthy adults, the vast majority of the time. They learn those habits, how to eat, exercise, things they need to do to be healthy at a young age, and that tends to stick with them. If they're not doing those things, they're fighting an uphill battle once they get into adulthood. So let's try to raise them up right from a young age when we can influence them the most. Dr. Judy Converse, for the first time in history, children are less healthy than the generations before them. And not just a little bit, they're precipitously worse off physically, mentally, emotionally, developmentally. We were kind of on a steady upswing, for generations. And then right now, we've kind of dropped the ball and it's gone the other way. So we need to make changes. We need to raise healthier kids. So we'll go through a bunch of things, and we'll start out, of course, Team Chiropractic, we're going to talk about structure and how that affects your overall health. And it starts often with kids. I've been at this for 22 years. For the first time over the last, 5 or so years, I would say, we're seeing kids come into the office and their postures are worse than their parents, their forward head posture. And, the biggest thing that has changed is, the use of cell phones, this thing we call text neck. The average smartphone user spends about 2 to 4 hours a day on their smartphone. Kids are doing that, or they're on their tablets, whether it be at home for fun or at school. Kids are on their tablets learning. Stretches the tissues, in their neck, puts constant stress on the spine. It's so bad, in fact, that we're starting to see these little horns or spurs growing off the back of young people's skulls, similar to the way a heel spur would grow from constant tension on the heel. We're seeing that in people's skulls from that constant tension that's applied by holding your head in that forward posture. That's something that doesn't happen overnight. That happens over years due to that bad posture. So we need to address that, and we need to catch that, identify it as young as we possibly can so we can make those changes. And, you need to be paying attention to your kids' posture while they're using, smartphones, while they're using their tablets. We can't totally avoid it because it's part of their education. It's part of society now. They're going to be on those devices. We need to make sure they're doing it with good posture, head back, sitting up straight, the way we teach you guys to do it in our posture class. So make sure your kids are doing that. Screen time is a big issue, and it's a fight at my house. I'm sure for just about everyone, it's a fight at your house. Kids 8 to 18 spend about 7 hours a day totally with screen time. Now that's a combination of time at school, on their computers, at home doing homework, watching TV, and then of course on their smartphones or their tablets or their other devices. That's an incredible amount, and it's way too much. The American Health Association recommends that be limited to really about 2 hours a day for that age. And if they're younger, like 2 to 5-year-old kids, really a limit of 1 hour per day. So most of you, and when I saw that number, I'm saying, I was like, wow, that is going to be really hard to do. But you need to start cutting that back. If your kids are in that group that are spending, 5, 6, 7 hours a day on devices, you need to start cutting that back. And, trust me, the fastest way to do it, the best way to do it is to cut it back before it starts. And parents, we need to lead by example. Don't be at the dinner table on your cell phone, on your tablet, be focused on your family, talking to them, conversing with them, and the kids will do the same back with us. So we need to, be the leaders and lead by example, practicing good posture and putting the smartphones and cell phones down. Backpacks. This is another big thing that, didn't used to be as much of an issue, I think, when I was growing up, going to school and high school, in the 70s and 80s. Kids are carrying these crazy heavy backpacks, and you see them. You see these little kids, and they're like hunched over like this because their backpack's so heavy. The general recommendation that we have is your kids' backpack shouldn't weigh more than about 15% of their body weight. And, that's not that much. If you've got a 48-pound kid, that's only a 7-pound backpack. So that's not that much. So you've got to really be careful, what they're carrying back and forth every day. You need to pick a good backpack, and they're worth spending a little bit of money on to get a good one. Padded shoulder straps, padded, back area here. You want something that has, a waist strap so you can kind of hold things in there. You always want to load your heaviest stuff closest to the back, to the spine, and that kind of helps them manage that load. You never want to be, hanging, with just one strap on. I know sometimes it seems like the fashion kind of changes back and forth a little bit. If you're carrying something heavy, you want it over both shoulders. You want those straps over both sides. I know I do some backpacking. I'm a Boy Scout leader, so I get out, sometimes with 40, 50-pound packs, and how you pack it, how your weight distribution is key. If you have it wrong, and if you try to just, if it's balanced unevenly, it's going to dig into your shoulder, it's going to cause pain there, it's going to throw your spine off, it's going to be really bad for you. So make sure you have an even load that's distributed properly so, it can be as comfortable as possible. Another, and maybe the biggest thing I think that has changed, in this generation is we're trading, green time, outside time for screen time. Where, when you were, and I was a kid growing up, and, probably when most of you were, growing up, 10, 20, 30 years ago, we played outside. That's kind of what you did. That's changed a lot. Kids, are much more inside. They're on their video games. That's even, they're socializing. My kids will be on, NBA 2K or whatever the video game is with all their friends, so it's like a social thing, but they're all sitting in their playrooms or in their bedrooms on it inside, rather than being outside doing stuff. So we need to really make that move to get kids outside more. Now, there's different reasons for that, whether, you feel like the neighborhoods aren't safe, or, you're just really worried about them, which is logical. If that's the case, you've got to make sure you're getting them into structured activities where they're outdoors, where they're going to be outside, whether it be sports or scouts or Y guys or something, where they are outside doing activities, because we've got to get them out there. We've got to get them, away from the TV screen, away from indoors. The benefits of outdoor play, are tremendous. There's a ton of them. It improves our cognitive function. Kids who play outdoors, kids who play sports outdoors do better in school. There's plenty of research to back that up. Playing outside helps build, weight-bearing exercise out there helps build bone density. You're getting vitamin D, helps your immune system, higher fitness levels, less hyperactivity, less depression, less mental issues, when you're outside playing a lot, and you get better sleep, so just tremendous physical, mental benefits from playing outside. Now, this slide is probably going to alarm everyone when we talk about, what's the recommended number of hours for kids to be like in free play. For your toddlers 1 to 5, about 5 to 8 hours of active free play. So that's like most of their day, right? As much outside as you can be. Even for school-age children, 5 to 13, 4 to 5 hours of physical activity. High schoolers, 3 to 4 hours. So that's like, where are you going to find that time in the day? So, even if they're doing, 30 minutes at lunch, they're doing a couple hours after school, with practice, if they're playing a sport, it's hard to get that many hours. We only have 24 hours in a day, and they've got homework and all this other stuff. So they need to be doing it, on a regular basis every day. And then certainly on those weekends when there is a little more free time, they need to be outside. They need to be outside playing, hiking, doing some kind of outdoor activity. Because those numbers are big, but that's really what's going to get you the most benefit. And, we need to get out there and do it with them, because the more we're out there, it's tremendous benefit to us, that family time, getting out there and exercising. I still coach soccer. That's kind of my thing, and do a lot of backpacking with the Boy Scouts. So that kind of helps keep me going. It's gotten a lot harder because I'm still getting a little bit older, and they're getting older, but they're getting like 16, 17, my oldest one, and his friends are hard to keep up with now. I used to be able to, have to wait for them. Now they're waiting for me, but I still keep digging, keep going after them. Hopefully it's keeping me young. Structured sports and team sports, are a big thing, and they're really important. There's a lot of benefit to them, but I think there's a couple of things, kind of disturbing trends that are happening now that weren't happening years ago when I was playing sports. When I was in high school, you went from season to season. You played soccer or football, then you played basketball or you wrestled, then you played baseball or did tennis or track in the spring, and we all went from one to the next. Now kids are specializing in a sport at a much younger age. And unfortunately, that, I think, has a lot of bad effects. Number one, it's causing overuse injuries. The number of ACL surgeries in young kids has skyrocketed. The number of elbow surgeries, in kids who play baseball, especially pitchers, has skyrocketed because instead of doing one sport, then shifting into the next sport, kids are doing the same sport all year from a young age. They're either playing soccer or they're playing baseball, and they're on their travel team, and they're just doing it year round. And that really puts too much stress. And it really, most studies show, doesn't benefit them in their sport. Playing different things helps build athleticism, builds different skills that are going to help you as you cross over. A lot of the prominent college coaches, from Jim Tressel, who coached at Ohio State, and Nick Saban, big time football coaches, they always try to recruit wrestlers because they know that they have core strength, they understand leverage, they have different athletic skill sets than kids who just played football their whole life. So I think there's a lot of crossover from one sport to the next that makes you a better athlete, which is going to help you, as you kind of try to get more competitive as you get a little older into sports that you don't get if you're playing one sport from the time you're 7, 8 years old. Baseball, I think is a bad thing with this. And one of the things I always, because I see a lot of kids who play, maybe for their school team, then they also play travel ball. Do not let your kid pitch on multiple teams. If they're a pitcher, that's great. They need to pitch for one team. So their pitch count can be monitored because the studies now show, we used to think it was throwing a curveball when you were too young that tore up your elbow. The new studies kind of say that's not true. It really is all about pitch count, throwing too many pitches and really throwing too many times overhead. It's not just pitching, it's the total volume you're throwing overhead is really bad. So you want to have that monitored by one coach on one team. Play on another team if you want to, but you're not a pitcher. You're going to play the field somewhere. You need to take a minimum of 4 months off every year from throwing. At least 4 months, and really, 3 months off from any kind of pitching, overhead throwing. 4 months off from competitive pitching. That's something you see almost every, seems like, young baseball pitcher in the major leagues misses a year because they have what they call Tommy John surgery. The ulnar collateral ligament in here goes bad. They're just tearing it up, and it starts at a young age when they're pitching way too much. Diet is a big thing, and we talk about our 6 essentials, which we'll hit on as we go. But the diet, our kids eat, similar to what we're doing. We want to be eating, nutrient-dense food, good protein sources, free-range chicken, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, limiting the amount of sugar. And, that can be a difficult thing for parents because, especially as kids, I've got a 17-year-old who's driving, and his friends love to go after school and go to Chick-fil-A and they want to buy this big vat of Coke, that's like 32 ounces, whatever. And it's got like a week's worth of sugar in it. So we need to try to get them away from that at a young age. And a lot of the things that juice boxes are kind of one of my pet peeve. That's like, oh, that's a healthy thing. Let's give them some juice. If you look at that little 6-ounce box, a lot of them have like 20 grams of sugar. They actually have more sugar per ounce than a can of Coke, some of those things. So we really need to be, substituting, sparkling water. You can do some flavored waters for kids. Potato chips, French fries. There's always, better substitutes. The USDA and the food we get at school, they cap the amount of fat and sugar, but they don't count, or excuse me, can we rewind that?
Okay.
Here. Okay. All right, so just go back. Start where I was.
Start where you were.
Okay. So one of the things with the USDA, they regulate certain things. They regulate the amount of sodium, the amount of fat that can be added, but they don't regulate added sugar. So some of the foods that are served in schools just have tremendous amount of added sugar. So sugar leads to inflammation, it leads to weight gain, and it's one of the things that really is harmful to our health. So, and it's addictive, so we need to keep our kids away from that as much as possible, and that all starts at a young age. So, making choices like Lunchables over there, which have added sugars, they've got nitrates and nitrites that cause cancer. I mean, they're terrible for you. We can substitute, nitrate-free, lunch meat and give it to them, So making those good choices are key. And again, build those habits. You're building those habits when they're young, when you're buying their groceries. That's going to translate into their habits when they're, in high school and they're making food choices, when they're off in college and they're making food choices, and when they're adults. So they've got to learn that now. How much sleep kids get, is a big thing. Sleep is another one of the 6 essentials of health. We have to get, the right amount. So you can kind of follow through this graph, as far as how much you should get. And that varies a little bit from person to person. We're all a little bit different. Some can operate on less, some need more, but you want to make sure your kids are getting on a good sleep schedule. And the big thing is, how are they when they wake up in the morning? If they're not waking up and you have to go up and wake them up, or their alarm clock's blaring for 30 minutes before they wake up and they're just exhausted and miserable getting out of bed, then they're not getting enough sleep. They're not getting enough rest. That's going to affect them, their performance all day, at school, on the field, whatever they're doing. And it's also going to affect their health. So they either need to get to bed a little bit earlier. And another thing is they need to turn off those electronics earlier. That stuff should all be off a couple hours before bed, because when you're, up playing video games, that is stimulating your brain. Everything is firing, the lights on the computer screen or on the TV screen, and all that activity is waking you up. It's kind of making your brain go crazy. And then to just try to turn it off and lay down to go to bed, it doesn't work that way. Your body cannot just shut that off. So that's a great thing. Parents, don't sit up and watch the evening news, right before bed, or be on your phone looking at work emails and stuff. And your kids shouldn't be on it either. All that stuff needs to shut down a couple hours before bedtime. Scoliosis is something, a curvature of the spine that we deal with here in our office. We see it, in adults. We see it in kids from a young age. And, a lot of times, if as a parent, if you have some of that, your kids are more likely to have that. So they need to be in here. They need to be checked. The earlier we find it, the more likely we are to be able to affect it. A couple of things that you need to be looking for that are kind of early signs. If you see uneven hips or uneven shoulders, that can be like the first thing a lot of people notice, but really they need to be checked, by a chiropractor, by someone who looks at spines all day. That's what we do here. So we're going to be able to pick up subtle differences much faster than, their pediatrician or their gym teacher or anyone else who's looking for it. This is what we do. So we're going to be able to notice those differences faster. So we want to make sure we catch that as early as possible. We want to catch it before kids go through puberty, because when that's happening, if they do have one, that's when it tends to really progress and get much worse at a faster rate when they hit that growth spurt. So we have to catch that early. Great study published in the Chiropractic Research Journal compared 200 kids raised under chiropractic and 200 kids raised in a medical model. And what they found out, the chiropractic group had fewer ear infections, fewer allergies, less asthma. They were overall much healthier than the kids who hadn't received it. So, we all want to raise healthy kids, so chiropractic should be a big part of that. So you want to get them in here, get them checked. Couple things we always want to hit on, as we go through. We want to remember, you may be saying, my kid feels fine. My kid feels perfect. He goes and plays his sports. He goes to school. He never complains of anything. Is that a good way to judge your health? And, if you were all here, I would hope you would all be saying, no, it is not a good way to judge your health. We don't judge our health by our symptoms. We shouldn't judge our kids' health just by their symptoms. We can be subluxated, and many people are, without being in pain, for the simple reason. Remember, only about 10% of these nerves are pain sensitive. The other 90%, the motor nerves, the autonomic nerves that control your organs and your glands and skin temperature, are not pain sensitive. So you can be irritating those, affecting the way your body's functioning, but not necessarily causing pain. So we always want to make sure we have that checked, and they may be fine, they may not have any issue, then we just check them again in a month and everything's good. But if we do find an issue, we want to fix it as quickly, as early as we possibly can. Sickness and disease, whether we're talking about adults or kids, there's two things that happen. We have deficiencies and we have toxicities. Deficiencies of decreased nerve flow, lack of the 6 essentials. And then we have toxicities from the environment, from diet, from abuse of medications, from mental stresses that cause us to be sick, that weaken, our immune systems, that weaken our body and make us more sick. So we want to be over here living, the 6 essentials. So you want to start every day with your spiritual mental alignment. Do that. You get your kind of good thoughts to start your day. And you're going to do your physical alignment, through chiropractic. You want to make sure you have that proper structure. We're going to do our nutritional alignment. We're going to eat correctly. We're going to exercise in alignment, every day. We're going to rest in alignment, so proper sleeping position, for kids, just like for us. Ideally, we want them on their back, with a cervical roll under here to help with that neck curve. Second choice will be on the side. On the stomach's the worst one. And then finally, we want to remove chemical stresses. We want to keep them out of our diet. We want to stay away from them as much as we can. Some of them we can avoid, so we still recommend, detoxing, twice a year. What we're doing, special guest for anyone who views this, and we certainly encourage you to share it with your friends who are parents. Chance to come in, have their kids checked. If they're of age, that we take x-rays, includes all x-rays, their first adjustment, doctor's report, so we can kind of see what's going on. If we need to do something treatment-wise, we can. If not, we'll just schedule them and we'll check them, at a future date. So $47, we do all that. So we certainly encourage you, if your kids haven't been in here, bring them in, and share this with your friends. I thank you for taking the time to view this. I certainly appreciate your time. I want to close with one quote that I kind of think of, and, being a parent, is not about preparing the road for our children. It's about preparing our children for the road. Eventually there comes a time when our kids will move on. They'll be out of the house. They'll be away from our kind of constant influence. We need to have them ready for that. And certainly one of the biggest things I think we can do to have them ready is to teach them what they need to do to be healthy. If we're not healthy, we are nothing. We don't have anything without our health. So we need to make the commitment to do it for ourselves, but also certainly to do it for our children going forward. I thank you again for viewing. Feel free to contact me at the office with any questions you have about this, about your kids, their health, and certainly look forward to seeing your families in the office soon.